In 1974, a mother in suburban Detroit baked a Texas sheet cake. For her son's birthday using a recipe from the back of a Hershey's cocoa box. She poured hot chocolate frosting over the warm cake, let it soak in, and carried it to the table where 12 kids devoured every crumb in under 10 minutes. No fancy layers, just a simple chocolate sheet cake that made everyone happy. While today's bakers stress over Pinterest-perfect cakes, mothers in the 70s baked desserts that were easy, reliable, and made from ingredients everyone already had in the pantry. These 30 forgotten baked desserts fed families, filled church potluck tables, and made birthdays special without complicated steps. Let's count down the desserts that defined the 70s. Sheet cake ruled the 70s and became the most requested dessert at birthday parties, church potlucks, and family gatherings across America. A simple chocolate cake battered and baked in a rimmed sheet pan. No layers, no fancy decorating, just one flat cake that fed a crowd. Butter, cocoa powder, flour, sugar, eggs, buttermilk, baking soda, vanilla, and a pinch of salt mixed together and poured into a greased jelly roll pan. The cake baked at 350 degrees for 20 minutes until just set. While the cake was still hot, the frosting, butter, cocoa, milk, powdered sugar, vanilla, and chopped pecans, boiled on the stovetop and poured immediately over the warm cake. The hot frosting soaked into every pore of the cake, creating a fudgy, moist, intensely chocolate dessert that tasted better the next day. Texas, sheet cake was fast, foolproof, and fed 20 people from one pan. Kids scraped their plates. Adults ate seconds. Everyone asked for the recipe. Pineapple upside-down cake was the show-stopping dessert mothers baked when they wanted something beautiful without complicated techniques. Butter and brown sugar melted together in a cast-iron skillet or round cake pan. Canned pineapple rings arranged in a circle on top of the sugar. Maraschino cherries nestled in the center of each ring. Yellow cake batter, box mix or from scratch, poured over the fruit. The cake baked at 350 degrees for 45 minutes until golden, and a toothpick came out clean. The pan flipped upside down onto a serving plate while still warm, revealing caramelized pineapple and cherries glistening on top. Pineapple upside-down cake looked fancy, but required only a can of pineapple, a jar of cherries, and a simple yellow cake. Kids loved the sweet, sticky fruit. Adults loved the caramelized brown sugar. Mothers loved the fact that one cake could impress guests without requiring pastry bags or fondant. Carrot cake became the sophisticated dessert of the 70s, proving that vegetables belonged in cake and cream cheese belonged in frosting. Grated carrots folded into spiced cake batter with cinnamon, nutmeg, crushed pineapple, chopped walnuts, vegetable oil, eggs, flour, sugar, baking soda, and vanilla. The batter poured into 2 round cake pans or a 9x13 pan and baked at 350 degrees for 35 to 40 minutes. Cream cheese frosting, softened cream cheese, butter, powdered sugar, from vanilla, whipped until fluffy and spread thick between layers and over the top and sides. Carrot cake tasted sweet, spiced, moist, and just healthy enough that mothers convinced themselves the carrots made it acceptable for breakfast. Kids ate around the walnuts. Adults praised the tangy cream cheese frosting. Carrot cake appeared at Easter dinners, spring potlucks, and birthdays when families wanted something special that still felt homemade and wholesome. Before we continue, 7-layer bars, also called magic cookie bars, required no mixing bowl, no electric mixer, no complicated steps. Graham cracker crumbs mixed with melted butter pressed into the bottom of a 9x13 pan. Chocolate chips scattered over the crust. Butterscotch chips layered on top of the chocolate chips. The sweetened shredded coconut sprinkled over the chips. chopped pecans, or walnuts scattered over the coconut. A can of sweetened condensed milk drizzled over everything, coating every layer. The pan baked at 350 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes until golden and bubbling. The bars cooled completely before cutting into squares. 7-layer bars were sweet, chewy, crunchy, and impossibly rich. Kids loved the chocolate and butterscotch. Adults loved the coconut and nuts. Mothers loved the fact that one pan of bars could feed a crowd and required nothing more than layering ingredients and letting the oven do the work. No mixing, no measuring cups, just layer and bake. Before we move on, many of you asked in the comments where to find these recipes. We even received tons of email too, so we published these recipes on our website. The link is in the description. Let's continue. Dump cake earned its name because every ingredient got dumped into a pan without mixing, stirring, or measuring carefully. Then canned cherry pie filling or apple pie filling spread across the bottom of a greased 9x13 baking dish. Dry yellow cake mix sprinkled evenly over the fruit, covering every inch. Sliced butter, an entire stick cut into thin pats, arranged over the dry cake mix. The pan baked uncovered at 350 degrees for 45 to 50 minutes until the top turned golden and crispy and the fruit bubbled at the edges. Dump cake served warm with vanilla ice cream or Cool Whip. Kids loved the sweet fruit and crispy cake topping. Adults loved the simplicity and the fact that dessert happened without measuring cups, mixing bowls, or electric mixers. Dump cake was foolproof, fast, and required only 3 ingredients. It fed families from the 70s through today without ever going out of style. These 5 desserts ruled every 70s kitchen. No fancy layers, no Pinterest perfection, just simple baked from scratch or boxed mix desserts that fed families, filled potluck tables, and made birthdays special. Mothers baked them without stress. Kids devoured them without complaints. Everyone left the table happy. Lemon bars brought bright, tangy sweetness to dessert tables and cut through the heavy chocolate and coconut flavors that dominated 70s baking. A simple shortbread crust, butter, flour, powdered sugar, salt, pressed into the bottom of a 9x13 pan and baked at 350 degrees for 20 minutes until lightly golden. Lemon filling, eggs, granulated sugar, flour, lemon juice, lemon zest, whisked together and poured over the hot crust. The pan returned to the oven for another 25 minutes until the filling set, but still jiggled slightly in the center. The bars cooled completely, then dusted generously with powdered sugar before cutting into squares. Lemon bars tasted bright, sweet, tart, and buttery. Kids loved the sugary crust. Adults loved the tangy lemon filling. Lemon bars appeared at spring potlucks, Easter dinners, and summer picnics when families wanted something lighter than chocolate cake, but still sweet enough to satisfy. Better Than SX cake, also called Seven Sins cake or Better Than Anything cake, earned its provocative name because the dessert was so rich, so decadent, so intensely sweet that eating it felt sinful. A chocolate cake, box mix or from scratch, baked in a 9x13 pan and poked all over with a wooden spoon handle while still hot. Sweetened condensed milk poured over the cake, soaking into every hole. Caramel sauce drizzled over the condensed milk. The cake cooled completely, then topped with Cool Whip spread thick and smooth, crushed Heath bars or toffee bits sprinkled over the Cool Whip for crunch. Better Than SX cake stayed refrigerated until serving. Kids loved the sweet, creamy layers. Adults loved the rich chocolate and caramel. Church ladies called it Better Than Anything cake to avoid embarrassment, but everyone still requested the recipe under the original scandalous name that made potluck dinners just a little more interesting. Sock It To Me cake earned its fun, a catchy name from a popular comedy show, catchphrase in the late 60s, and became the coffee cake-style dessert of the 70s. Yellow cake batter made with a box mix, sour cream, eggs, oil, sugar, and vanilla poured halfway into a greased Bunt pan. A cinnamon sugar pecan mixture, brown sugar, cinnamon, chopped pecans, sprinkled over the batter. The remaining batter poured on top, covering the cinnamon layer. The cake baked at 350 degrees for 50 to 55 minutes until golden and a toothpick came out clean. The cake cooled in the pan for 15 minutes, then turned out onto a plate. Powdered sugar glaze, powdered sugar, milk, vanilla, drizzled over the warm cake. Sock it to me. Cake tasted buttery, sweet, and lightly spiced. Kids loved the cinnamon swirl. Adults ate it for breakfast with coffee. The fun name made everyone smile, and the simple Bunt shape looked elegant without requiring decorating skills. Poke cake became the colorful, fun dessert of 70s birthday parties and 4th of July picnics. White cake, box mix or from scratch, baked in a 9 by 13 pan and cooled for 15 minutes. The cake poked all over with a wooden spoon handle, creating deep holes. Jello, strawberry, cherry, lime, blue raspberry, or any flavor, mixed with boiling water, then poured slowly over the cake, filling every hole. The cake refrigerated for several hours until the jello set and created colorful streaks throughout every slice. Cool whip spread over the top as frosting. Poke. Cake stayed refrigerated until serving. Kids loved the bright colors and sweet jello flavor. Adults loved the moist cake and the fun, festive appearance. Red, white, and blue poke cake appeared at every 4th of July picnic. Rainbow poke cake appeared at birthday parties. Poke cake was easy, fun, colorful, and always disappeared first at potlucks. Hummingbird cake became the southern showstopper of the 70s, combining bananas, pineapple, and pecans into a moist, spiced cake that tasted like the best parts of banana bread and carrot cake married together. Mashed ripe bananas, crushed pineapple with juice, chopped pecans, flour, sugar, eggs, vegetable oil, cinnamon, vanilla, baking soda, and salt mixed together and poured into 3 round cake pans. The cake baked at 350 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes. Cream cheese frosting, cream cheese, butter, powdered sugar, vanilla, spread thick between layers and over the top and sides. Some more chopped pecans pressed into the frosting. Hummingbird cake tasted sweet, tropical, nutty, and impossibly moist. Kids loved the sweet banana flavor. Adults loved the elegant layers and cream cheese frosting. Hummingbird cake appeared at Easter dinners, spring weddings, and Sunday suppers when Southern cooks wanted to show off without saying they were showing off. 10 desserts down. Everyone baked from simple ingredients, box mixes, canned fruit, cream cheese, jello. Mothers in the 70s didn't complicate dessert. They baked fast, served proud, and watched their families eat seconds. That's how dessert worked. Simple, delicious, loved by everyone at the table. Oatmeal cake became the humble, unassuming dessert that surprised everyone with its tender crumb and broiled coconut pecan topping that tasted like candy. Quick oats soaked in boiling water for 20 minutes until soft and plump. The oats mixed with softened butter, brown sugar, granulated sugar, eggs, flour, baking soda, cinnamon, nutmeg, vanilla, and a pinch of salt. The batter poured into a greased 9 by 13 pan and baked at 350 degrees for 30 to 35 minutes until a toothpick came out clean. While the cake baked, the topping mixed together in a small bowl. Softened butter, brown sugar, evaporated milk, sweetened shredded coconut, and chopped pecans. The hot cake pulled from the oven, and the topping spread evenly across the entire surface. The pan slid under the broiler for 2 to 3 minutes, watched carefully, until the topping bubbled and turned golden brown and caramelized. Oatmeal cake cooled slightly before cutting into squares. The cake tasted warm, spiced, and moist from the oats. The topping tasted like coconut pecan candy, crunchy and sweet and impossible to stop eating. Kids scraped the topping off first, then ate the cake. Adults ate the whole thing together, savoring the way the crunchy topping balanced the tender cake underneath. Oatmeal cake appeared at church potlucks, family reunions, and weeknight dessert tables when mothers wanted something that felt special without requiring frosting, layers, or decorating skills. The oats made it feel almost healthy, though the broiled sugar topping proved otherwise. Oatmeal cake was simple, reliable, and always requested again. Gooey buttercake became the street Lewis legend that spread across the country in the 70s, proving that a cake could be dense, gooey, sweet, and impossibly rich all at once. Yellow cake mix combined with melted butter and 1 egg, pressed into the bottom of a greased 9x13 pan to form a dense cookie-like crust. Cream cheese softened to room temperature and beaten with 2 more eggs until smooth. Powdered sugar added gradually and beaten until creamy and thick. The cream cheese mixture poured over the cake mix crust and spread carefully to cover every inch. The pan baked at 350 degrees for 35 to 40 minutes until the edges set and turned golden, but the center stayed gooey and jiggly. The cake cooled completely. The center firmed up as it cooled but never became fully solid. Powdered sugar dusted generously over the top before serving. Gooey butter cake sliced into squares with a sharp knife. Each piece wobbled slightly when lifted, the gooey center threatening to ooze out. Kids loved the sweet cheesecake-like topping. Adults loved the dense, buttery crust underneath. Gooey butter cake appeared at St. Louis bakeries first, then spread to church potlucks, family gatherings, and 70s dessert tables across the Midwest. The cake tasted like cheesecake, and coffee cake had a rich, gooey baby. It was impossible to eat just 1 square. Mothers warned not to overbake it. The gooey center was the whole point. Gooey butter cake proved that simple ingredients, cake mix, cream cheese, butter, sugar, could create something unforgettable when combined in exactly the right way. Peanut butter sheet cake became the dessert that peanut butter lovers requested again and again, proving that chocolate didn't have to dominate 70s baking. Flour, sugar, baking soda, and salt whisked together in a big bowl. Butter, peanut butter, and water boiled together in a saucepan, then poured over the dry ingredients and stirred until smooth. Eggs, buttermilk, and vanilla added and mixed until the batter turned smooth and pourable. The batter poured into a greased and floured jelly roll pan and baked at 350 degrees for 20 minutes until a toothpick came out clean. While the cake baked, the frosting came together on the stovetop. Butter, peanut butter, and milk boiled together, then removed from heat. Powdered sugar stirred in until smooth and thick. The hot frosting poured over the hot cake the moment it came out of the oven, spreading quickly before the frosting set. Chopped peanuts sprinkled over the top if the family wanted extra crunch. Peanut butter sheet cake cooled slightly before cutting into squares. The cake tasted nutty, sweet, and moist. The frosting soaked into the warm cake, creating a rich, peanut buttery glaze that stayed soft and never fully hardened. Kids ate it with glasses of cold milk. Adults ate it straight from the pan late at night. Peanut butter sheet cake appeared at birthday parties for peanut butter fanatics, at potlucks where chocolate cake needed competition, and on weeknight dessert tables when mothers wanted something different from the usual chocolate and vanilla. Peanut butter lovers called it perfection. Fruit cocktail cake became the budget-friendly dessert that turned a can of mixed fruit into something sweet, moist, and topped with broiled coconut that tasted like candy. Flour, sugar, baking soda, and salt whisked together in a big bowl. A can of fruit cocktail, juice and all, dumped directly into the dry ingredients along with an egg and vanilla. The batter stirred just until combined, then poured into a greased 9 by 13 pan. Brown sugar sprinkled evenly over the top of the batter before baking. The cake baked at 350 degrees for 35 to 40 minutes until golden and a toothpick came out clean. While the cake baked, the topping mixed together: softened butter, granulated sugar, evaporated milk, sweetened shredded coconut, and chopped pecans. The hot cake pulled from the oven and the topping spread evenly across the entire surface. The pan slid under the broiler for 2 to 3 minutes, watched carefully until the topping bubbled and caramelized into golden, crunchy perfection. Fruit cocktail cake cooled slightly before cutting into squares. The cake tasted sweet, moist, and studded with bits of peaches, pears, grapes, and cherries from the fruit cocktail. The broiled coconut topping tasted like praline candy. Kids scraped the topping off first, then discovered the moist cake underneath. Adults ate the whole thing together, praising the way the cheap can of fruit cocktail turned into something that tasted expensive. Fruit cocktail cake appeared at church potlucks, family reunions, and Depression-era holdover menus when mothers proved that simple pantry staples could become something worth requesting again. Earthquake. Cake earned its name because the cream cheese, coconut, and pecans swirled and cracked through the chocolate cake as it baked, creating an earthquake-like appearance that looked messy but tasted incredible. Sweetened shredded coconut and chopped pecans scattered across the bottom of a greased 9 by 13 pan. German chocolate cake mix prepared according to the box directions and poured over the coconut and pecans. Cream cheese softened to room temperature and beaten with softened butter until smooth. Powdered sugar added gradually and beaten until creamy. Spoonfuls of the cream cheese mixture dropped randomly over the cake batter. No need to spread evenly. The cream cheese would swirl and crack as it baked. The pan baked at 350 degrees for 40 to 45 minutes until the cake set and the cream cheese topping cracked and swirled into the chocolate cake, creating an earthquake effect. Earthquake cake cooled completely before cutting into squares. The cake tasted rich, chocolatey, and studded with coconut and pecans. The cream cheese swirl tasted tangy and sweet, cutting through the richness of the German chocolate. Kids loved the messy, cracked appearance and the surprise pockets of cream cheese. Adults loved the combination of flavors and the fact that the messy look was actually the goal. Earthquake cake appeared at potlucks where presentation didn't matter as much as taste, at birthday parties for chocolate lovers, and on weeknight dessert tables when mothers wanted something impressive without requiring decorating skills. Earthquake cake proved that messy could be beautiful and delicious. Rehook, 15 desserts down. Everyone baked with box mixes, canned fruit, cream cheese, coconut, or peanut butter. Mothers in the 70s didn't stress over Pinterest-perfect presentations. They baked fast, served proud, and watched their families devour every crumb. That's how dessert happened. Strawberry cake became the pink, fruity dessert that appeared at spring birthdays, Easter dinners, and Mother's Day celebrations when families wanted something lighter than chocolate, but still sweet and celebratory. Strawberry cake mix combined with strawberry Jell-O powder, eggs, oil, water, and a small package of frozen strawberries with juice. The batter mixed until smooth and pink, then poured into 2 round cake pans or a 9 by 13 pan. The cake baked at 350 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes until a toothpick came out clean. Strawberry frosting made by beating softened butter with powdered sugar, a spoonful of the leftover frozen strawberries with juice, and a splash of milk until smooth, fluffy, and pale pink. The frosting spread thick between layers and over the top and sides of the cooled cake. Strawberry cake tasted sweet, fruity, and subtly strawberry-flavored, not fresh strawberries, but the artificial strawberry flavor that defined 70s baking. Kids loved the pink color and the sweet frosting. Adults loved the light, fruity flavor that felt perfect for spring celebrations. Strawberry cake appeared at Easter dinners when families wanted something pastel and pretty, at Mother's Day brunches when moms deserved something special, and at little girls' birthday parties when pink was the only acceptable color. The cake looked beautiful, without requiring food coloring or complicated decorating. The strawberry flavor came entirely from the cake mix, Jell-O and frozen berries, no fresh fruit needed. Strawberry cake proved that box mixes and Jell-O could combine into something that tasted homemade and felt special. Coconut sheet cake became the tropical-inspired dessert that brought sweetened coconut into every bite, creating a cake that tasted like a coconut cream pie baked into sheet cake form. White or yellow cake mix prepared according to the box directions, poured into a greased jelly roll pan, and baked at 350 degrees for 20 minutes until just set. While the cake baked, a mixture of sweetened condensed milk and cream of coconut stirred together until smooth. The hot cake poked all over with a wooden spoon handle, creating deep holes. The condensed milk mixture poured slowly over the hot cake, filling every hole and soaking into the entire cake. The cake cooled completely, then topped with Cool Whip, spread thick and smooth. Sweetened shredded coconut toasted in a dry skillet until golden and fragrant, then sprinkled generously over the Cool Whip. Coconut sheet cake stayed refrigerated until serving. The cake tasted moist, sweet, and intensely coconut-flavored. The Cool Whip topping tasted light and creamy. The toasted coconut added crunch and deeper coconut flavor. Kids loved the sweet, creamy layers. Adults loved the tropical flavor and the way the cake stayed moist for days in the refrigerator. Coconut sheet cake appeared at summer potlucks, tropical-themed birthday parties, and church suppers when someone wanted to bring something different from the usual chocolate and vanilla. Coconut lovers called it heaven. Coconut haters picked off the toasted coconut and ate the cake underneath. Coconut sheet cake proved that one flavor, coconut, could dominate a dessert and still make everyone happy. Applesauce. Cake became the moist, spiced dessert that mothers baked when they wanted something that felt wholesome enough to serve for breakfast, but sweet enough to satisfy dessert cravings. Flour, sugar, baking soda, cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, and salt whisked together in a big bowl. Applesauce, vegetable oil, eggs, and vanilla mixed together in another bowl. The wet ingredients poured into the dry ingredients and stirred just until combined. Raisins and chopped walnuts folded in if the family liked them. The batter poured into a greased 9x13 pan or a Bunt pan and baked at 350 degrees for 35 to 40 minutes until a toothpick came out clean. Cream cheese frosting spread over the cooled cake, or a simple powdered sugar glaze drizzled on top, or nothing at all. The cake tasted good plain. Applesauce. Cake tasted warm, spiced, moist, and subtly sweet. The applesauce kept the cake tender without adding fat. Kids ate it warm with butter. Adults ate it for breakfast with coffee, convincing themselves the applesauce made it healthy. Applesauce cake appeared at fall potlucks when apples were in season, at coffee hour after church services, and on weeknight dessert tables when mothers wanted something simple that didn't require frosting or fancy presentation. The cake stayed moist for days, wrapped in foil on the counter. Applesauce cake proved that simple ingredients applesauce, spices, flour, could create something comforting and delicious without requiring butter, chocolate, or complicated steps. It was humble, reliable, and always disappeared quietly from potluck tables. Upside down, peach cake followed the same beloved technique as pineapple upside-down cake, but swapped canned peaches for pineapple, creating a softer, sweeter, golden dessert that tasted like summer. Butter and brown sugar melted together in a cast-iron skillet or round cake pan until bubbling. Canned peach halves drained and arranged cut-side down in the butter-sugar mixture, covering the bottom of the pan in a pretty pattern. Maraschino cherries nestled in the center of each peach half for color. Yellow cake batter, box mix or from scratch, poured carefully over the peaches. The cake baked at 350 degrees for 40 to 45 minutes until golden and a toothpick came out clean. The pan flipped upside down onto a serving plate while still warm, revealing caramelized peaches glistening on top. Upside-down peach cake served warm or at room temperature, plain or with whipped cream. The cake tasted buttery, sweet, and moist. The caramelized peaches tasted soft and jammy, soaked in brown sugar syrup. Kids loved the sweet fruit and the fun upside-down reveal. Adults loved the elegant presentation that required no decorating skills. Upside-down peach cake appeared at summer potlucks when canned peaches lined pantry shelves, at birthday parties when someone wanted something different from chocolate cake, and on Sunday dessert tables when mothers wanted to impress without stress. The skillet-to-plate flip always felt like magic, revealing the golden peaches and making everyone ooh and ah. Upside-down peach cake proved that one simple technique, bake upside down, could turn ordinary cake and canned fruit into something beautiful. Blueberry dump cake followed the same foolproof formula as cherry and apple dump cakes, but swapped blueberry pie filling for a dessert that tasted like warm blueberry cobbler, baked in half the time. Canned blueberry pie filling spread across the bottom of a greased 9 by 13 baking dish, covering every inch in a thick purple layer. Dry yellow cake mix sprinkled evenly over the blueberry filling, covering the fruit completely. Sliced butter, an entire stick cut into thin pats, arranged over the dry cake mix, covering as much surface as possible. A sprinkle of cinnamon or lemon zest over the butter added extra flavor if desired. The pan baked uncovered at 350 degrees for 45 to 50 minutes until the top turned golden and crispy and the blueberry filling bubbled at the edges. Blueberry dump cake served warm with vanilla ice cream or Cool Whip. The cake topping tasted crispy and buttery. The blueberry filling tasted warm, sweet, and jammy. Kids loved the purple fruit and the crunchy topping. Adults loved the simplicity and the fact that dessert happened without measuring cups, mixing bowls, or electric mixers. Blueberry dump cake appeared at summer potlucks when blueberries felt seasonal even though the filling came from a can, at 4th of July picnics when red, white, and blue desserts dominated, and on weeknight dessert tables when mothers needed something fast and foolproof. Blueberry dump cake proved that 3 ingredients, pie filling, cake mix, butter, could create something that tasted homemade, comforting, and worth making again and again. 20 desserts down, everyone baked with cake mix, canned fruit, cream cheese, coconut, or simple pantry staples. Mothers in the 70s didn't complicate dessert. They baked fast, served proud, and watched their families ask for seconds. That's how dessert worked. Simple, delicious, always loved. Banana nut bread became the practical and delicious solution to overripe bananas that sat on kitchen counters turning brown and spotted, proving that imperfect fruit could become something better than the original. 3 or 4 very ripe bananas, the blacker the skins, the sweeter the bread, mashed with a fork until smooth and creamy in a big mixing bowl. Melted butter, granulated sugar, eggs and vanilla stirred into the mashed bananas until combined. Flour, baking soda, and a pinch of salt whisked together in another bowl, then folded gently into the banana mixture just until no dry streaks remained. Chopped walnuts or pecans folded in if the family liked them, though kids often requested plain banana bread without nuts. The batter poured into a greased loaf pan and baked at 350 degrees for 60 to 65 minutes until a toothpick inserted in the center came out clean and the top turned golden brown. Banana nut bread cooled in the pan for 10 minutes, then turned out onto a wire rack to cool completely, though most families sliced it warm and slathered butter on every piece. The bread tasted sweet, moist, banana-forward, and just slightly cake-like. The nuts added crunch and earthy flavor that balanced the sweetness. Kids ate it for breakfast, after school, and as dessert. Adults ate it with coffee in the morning and called it breakfast, even though it tasted like cake. Mothers loved the fact that overripe bananas, the ones nobody wanted to eat plain, could turn into something the whole family requested again and again. Zucchini bread became the surprising summer dessert that turned garden vegetables into sweet, moist, spiced quick bread that no one believed contained zucchini until they saw the green flecks. Zucchini shredded on a box grater, skin on, seeds included, until 2 cups of shredded, watery vegetable filled a measuring cup. The shredded zucchini squeezed gently in a clean kitchen towel to remove excess moisture, though not completely dry. Flour, sugar, baking soda, baking powder, cinnamon, nutmeg, and salt whisked together in a big bowl. Eggs, vegetable oil, and vanilla beaten together in another bowl, then stirred into the dry ingredients just until combined. The shredded zucchini folded in, along with chopped walnuts or pecans if desired. The batter divided between 2 greased loaf pans and baked at 350 degrees for 55 to 60 minutes until a toothpick came out clean and the tops turned golden. Zucchini bread cooled in the pans for 10 minutes, then turned out onto wire racks. The bread sliced best when completely cool, though most families ate it warm with butter. Pumpkin bread became the fall tradition that filled kitchens with the smell of cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves as the weather turned cold and families craved warm, spiced comfort. Canned pumpkin puree, not pumpkin pie filling, just plain puree, mixed with vegetable oil, eggs, granulated sugar, and vanilla in a big bowl until smooth. Flour, baking soda, baking powder, cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, ginger, and salt whisked together in another bowl, then folded gently into the pumpkin mixture just until no dry streaks remained. The batter divided between 2 greased loaf pans and baked at 350 degrees for 60 to 65 minutes until a toothpick inserted in the center came out clean and the tops turned deep golden brown. Pumpkin bread cooled in the pans for 10 minutes, then turned out onto wire racks. The bread sliced best when completely cool, though the smell tempted everyone to slice it warm. The bread tasted sweet, spiced, moist, and deeply autumnal. The canned pumpkin kept the bread tender and gave it a beautiful orange color. Kids ate it plain or with butter. Adults ate it with coffee and called it breakfast, even though it tasted like pumpkin pie without the crust. It froze beautifully, sliced or whole, ready to thaw and serve throughout the fall and winter months. Pumpkin bread proved that canned pumpkin was just as good as fresh, maybe better because it was consistent, smooth, and available year-round. The recipe spread through neighborhoods in the 70s as pumpkin became the flavor of fall and canned pumpkin sat on every grocery store shelf. Mothers added chocolate chips, swirled in cream cheese, or topped the batter with cinnamon sugar streusel before baking. Pumpkin bread became the gift bread, baked in mini loaf pans, wrapped in plastic wrap, and tied with ribbon, and given to neighbors, teachers, and friends during the holidays. It was practical, seasonal, and universally loved. Pumpkin bread never competed with fancy layer cakes or elaborate desserts, but it didn't need to. Cream cheese pound cake became the dense, buttery, fine-crumbed dessert that bakers made when they wanted something elegant and simple that required no frosting, no filling, no decoration, just pure, rich cake that tasted perfect plain or with a dusting of powdered sugar. Softened butter and softened cream cheese beaten together with an electric mixer until light, fluffy, and completely smooth. Granulated sugar added gradually, beaten until the mixture turned pale and creamy. Eggs added one at a time, beating well after each addition. Vanilla extract stirred in. Flour and a pinch of salt folded in gently just until combined. Overmixing would make the cake tough. The batter poured into a greased and floured Bunt pan or tube pan and baked at 325 degrees for 75 to 90 minutes until a toothpick came out clean and the top turned golden. The cake cooled in the pan for 15 minutes, then carefully turned out onto a wire rack to cool completely. Cream cheese pound cake sliced best when completely cool. The knife wiped clean between slices to show off the fine, tender crumb. The cake tasted rich, buttery, dense, and subtly tangy from the cream cheese. It wasn't dry like some pound cakes. The cream cheese kept it moist and tender for days. Kids ate it plain or with a glass of milk. Adults served it with fresh berries and whipped cream or toasted slices and buttered them for breakfast. Mothers loved the fact that the cake required no frosting, no layers, no decorating. It was beautiful and delicious as is. Cream cheese pound cake appeared at Sunday suppers when families wanted something elegant but not fussy, at ladies' luncheons served with tea and berries, and at holiday gatherings when the dessert table needed something simple and classic among the fancier cakes and pies. The cake wrapped tightly in foil and stored at room temperature for a week, staying moist and delicious. It froze beautifully, whole or sliced, ready to thaw and serve whenever company came over unexpectedly. Cream cheese pound cake proved that simple ingredients, butter, cream cheese, sugar, eggs, flour, could create something elegant and sophisticated without complicated techniques. The dense texture and rich flavor meant one slice satisfied completely. No one needed seconds, though most people took them anyway. The cake felt old-fashioned in the best way, a throwback to a time when dessert didn't need to be Instagram perfect or wildly creative to be loved. Cream cheese pound cake was timeless, reliable, and the kind of cake grandmothers baked for special occasions and everyday afternoons alike. Bunt cake became the elegant, to show-stopping dessert that required nothing more than a decorative pan and a simple glaze to look bakery beautiful, proving that fancy presentation didn't require fancy techniques. The Bunt pan, with its fluted, sculptural shape, turned any simple cake batter into something that looked impressive on a cake stand. Lemon Bunt cake started with yellow cake mix combined with lemon jello powder, eggs, oil, water, and lemon juice, creating a batter that tasted bright, tangy, and citrusy. Marble Bunt cake started with yellow cake batter, with half the batter mixed with cocoa powder and swirled into the plain batter before baking. The batter poured into a well-greased and floured Bunt pan, every ridge and curve coated thoroughly so the cake would release cleanly, and baked at 350 degrees for 45 to 50 minutes until a toothpick came out clean. The cake cooled in the pan for 15 minutes, then carefully inverted onto a wire rack or cake stand. The fluted shape revealed itself, turning a simple cake into something that looked elegant and bakery-worthy. lemon glaze, powdered sugar mixed with lemon juice, drizzled over the warm cake, pooling in the ridges and dripping down the sides. Marble Bunt cake dusted simply with powdered sugar or drizzled with chocolate glaze. The cakes sliced beautifully, each piece showing off the decorative shape and the moist, tender crumb. Bunt cakes tasted rich, buttery, and sweet. Lemon Bunt cake tasted bright and tangy, perfect for spring and summer. Marble Bunt cake tasted like chocolate and vanilla swirled together in every bite. Kids loved the pretty shape and the sweet glaze. Adults loved the elegant presentation that required no decorating skills. Mothers loved the fact that a Bunt pan could make any cake look fancy without requiring frosting, piping, bags, or hours of decorating. Bunt cakes appeared at birthday parties, holiday gatherings, church potlucks, and Sunday suppers when families wanted something that looked special without the stress of layer cakes. The cake stayed moist for days, wrapped in foil at room temperature. It froze beautifully, glazed or plain, ready to thaw and serve whenever company came over. Bunt cakes proved that the right pan could transform simple cake batter into something impressive. The Bunt pan became a kitchen staple in the 70s, passed down from mothers to daughters and pulled out for every celebration. Bakers experimented with flavors, chocolate, spice, orange, almond, but the technique stayed the same. Grease the pan well, pour in the batter, bake, cool, invert, and 25 desserts down. Everyone baked with simple ingredients: bananas, zucchini, pumpkin, cream cheese, cake mix. Mothers in the 70s turned garden vegetables and pantry staples into desserts. Families requested again and again. That's how baking worked. Simple, delicious, always loved, no fuss, just good food. Apple dump cake followed the same foolproof formula as cherry and blueberry dump cakes, but swapped apple pie filling for a dessert that tasted like warm apple cobbler with a buttery, crispy topping that everyone fought over. 2 cans of apple pie filling spread across the bottom of a greased 9x13 baking dish, covering every inch in a thick layer of sliced apples and sweet, cinnamon-spiced sauce. Dry yellow cake mix sprinkled evenly over the apple filling, covering the fruit completely. No mixing, no stirring, just dry cake mix, straight from the box. Sliced butter, an entire stick cut into thin pats, about 12 pieces, arranged over the dry cake mix, covering as much surface as possible so the butter would melt and soak into the cake mix as it baked. Ground cinnamon sprinkled over the butter added extra spice and warmth. The pan baked uncovered at 350 degrees for 45 to 50 minutes until the top turned golden, crispy, and bubbling, and the apple filling bubbled thick and hot at the edges. Apple dump cake served warm in bowls with vanilla ice cream melting over the top or Cool Whip dolloped on the side. The cake topping tasted crispy, buttery, and slightly crunchy, like streusel. The apple filling tasted warm, sweet, and perfectly spiced. Kids fought over the crispy edges where the cake mix turned extra golden. Pineapple sheet cake. Flour, sugar, baking soda, eggs, vanilla, and a can of crushed pineapple with all its juice mixed together in a big bowl until smooth and pourable, baked at 350 degrees for 20 minutes. The frosting spread over the warm cake, melting slightly into the surface and creating a smooth, tangy topping. And the cake was forgiving. It didn't matter if the pineapple juice was perfectly measured or if the batter looked thin. The cake always turned out moist and delicious. Pineapple sheet cake proved that canned fruit belonged in cakes just as much as fresh fruit, And sometimes the canned version worked better because the juice added moisture and the fruit stayed evenly distributed throughout the batter. Pineapple sheet cake fed families from the 70s onward with tropical sweetness, cream cheese tang, and the kind of simplicity that made everyone ask for the recipe. It was practical, reliable, and the taste of summer baked into a sheet pan that fed a crowd without stress. Chocolate mayonnaise cake shocked everyone who heard the ingredient list, but one bite proved that mayonnaise created the moistest, richest, most tender chocolate cake anyone ever tasted, turning skeptics into believers instantly. The recipe originated during the Depression when butter and eggs were scarce and mayonnaise, made from oil and eggs, could replace both in baking. Flour, sugar, cocoa powder, baking soda, and salt whisked together in a big bowl. Mayonnaise. Yes, real mayonnaise, straight from the jar, mixed with water, vanilla, and sometimes a spoonful of instant coffee to deepen the chocolate flavor. The wet ingredients stirred into the dry ingredients just until combined. The batter poured into 2 greased round cake pans, or a 9x13 pan, and baked at 350 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes until a toothpick came out clean. Chocolate frosting spread over the cooled cake, though the cake tasted so moist and rich that some families ate it plain. Chocolate mayonnaise cake, sliced beautifully, revealing a fine, tender crumb that stayed moist for days. The cake tasted deeply chocolate, rich, and impossibly moist, more moist than cakes made with butter. The mayonnaise flavor disappeared completely in baking, leaving only moisture and tenderness behind. Kids never knew mayonnaise hid inside. Adults whispered the secret ingredient to each other at potlucks, swearing they'd never believe it if they hadn't tasted it themselves. Mothers loved the fact that mayonnaise, something always in the refrigerator, could create a cake better than expensive butter and egg recipes. Chocolate mayonnaise cake appeared at birthday parties when mothers wanted chocolate cake that stayed moist even after sitting out for hours. At church potlucks, where it competed with other chocolate cakes and always won compliments, and on weeknight dessert tables when families craved chocolate comfort without complicated steps. The cake stayed moist for a week, wrapped in foil at room temperature, never drying out the way butter cakes sometimes did. It traveled well, froze beautifully, and reheated perfectly in the microwave for a warm, gooey slice late at night. The recipe spread through neighborhoods in the 70s as Depression-era tricks experienced a revival, and home bakers rediscovered old techniques that worked better than modern shortcuts. Mothers taught daughters the secret ingredient, swearing them to secrecy until after everyone tasted the cake and declared it the best chocolate cake they'd ever eaten. Chocolate mayonnaise cake proved that Depression-era creativity wasn't about deprivation. It was about innovation, using what you had to create something better than what you thought you needed. Wacky cake, also called depression cake, war cake, or crazy cake, earned its name because the recipe contained no eggs, no butter, no milk, yet somehow produced a moist, tender chocolate cake that tasted just as good as cakes made with expensive ingredients. And the recipe originated during the Depression and World War II, when rationing made butter, eggs, and milk scarce or impossible to find. Flour, sugar, cocoa powder, baking soda, and salt whisked together directly in an ungreased 9x13 baking pan. No mixing bowl needed. 3 wells or holes poked into the dry ingredients. Vegetable oil poured into 1 well. White vinegar poured into another well. Vanilla extract poured into the 3rd well. Cold water poured over everything. The ingredients stirred together right in the pan with a fork until smooth and combined. No electric mixer, no creaming butter, no fancy techniques. The pan slid into a 350-degree oven and baked for 30 to 35 minutes until a toothpick came out clean. Wacky cake cooled in the pan, being then dusted with powdered sugar or frosted with simple chocolate frosting made from cocoa, butter, milk, and powdered sugar. The cake sliced into squares and served directly from the pan. The cake tasted moist, tender, and deeply chocolate, despite containing no butter, eggs, or milk. The vinegar reacted with the baking soda to create lift and tenderness, mimicking the role eggs usually played. Kids never knew vinegar hid inside. They just knew the cake tasted good. Adults marveled at the chemistry and the practicality. Mothers loved the fact that pantry staples, flour, sugar, cocoa, oil, vinegar, could create a cake when the refrigerator was empty and the budget was tight. Wacky cake appeared on Depression-era tables when eggs and butter were luxuries families couldn't afford, on wartime tables when rationing limited ingredients, and on 70s tables when mothers rediscovered old recipes and shared them at potlucks as curiosities that tasted surprisingly good. The cake proved that deprivation could spark creativity and that simple chemistry, acid plus baking soda, could replace expensive ingredients. Wacky cake traveled well, stayed moist for days, and fed crowds cheaply. Date nut bread became the dense, sweet, sticky, quick bread that appeared during the holidays when dates filled grocery store shelves and families wanted something that felt traditional, old-fashioned, and just fancy enough to serve guests. Chopped dates, soaked in boiling water with baking soda for 10 to 15 minutes until softened and plump. The date mixture cooled slightly, then mixed with melted butter, brown sugar, an egg, and vanilla. Flour, baking powder, and salt whisked together, then folded gently into the date mixture just until combined. Chopped walnuts or pecans folded in for crunch and flavor. The batter poured into a greased loaf pan and baked at 350 degrees for 55 to 60 minutes until a toothpick came out clean and the top turned deep golden brown. Date nut bread cooled in the pan for 10 minutes, then turned out onto a wire rack. The bread sliced best when completely cool, though the smell tempted everyone to slice it warm. Bread tasted sweet, dense, sticky, and deeply caramelized from the dates. The nuts added crunch and earthy flavor. Kids ate it with butter or cream cheese. Adults served it sliced thin at holiday gatherings with coffee or tea. Mothers loved the fact that dates, which nobody ate plain, could turn into something everyone requested at Christmas. Date nut bread appeared on holiday dessert tables when families wanted something that felt traditional and old-fashioned, at church coffee hours during the Christmas season, and on gift plates when mothers baked mini loaves, wrapped them in plastic wrap, and tied them with ribbon, and gave them to neighbors and teachers. The bread stayed moist for a week, wrapped tightly in foil at room temperature. It froze beautifully, sliced or whole, ready to thaw and serve throughout the winter months. Date nut bread proved that dates belonged in baking just as much as they belonged in fruit bowls, and maybe more so because baking transformed them into something soft, sweet, and sticky. The recipe spread through families as holiday traditions, passed down from grandmothers who remembered when dates were a Christmas luxury and baking with them felt special. Date nut bread felt old-fashioned even in the 70s, a throwback to earlier decades when fruit-studded quick breads filled holiday tables. It was humble, traditional, and the kind of bread that made people feel connected to generations past. These 30 baked desserts prove that mothers in the 70s didn't need culinary degrees or fancy ingredients to feed their families something sweet and delicious. They baked with box mixes, canned fruit, cream cheese, and simple pantry staples. They poured hot frosting over warm cakes, dumped ingredients without mixing, and turned overripe bananas into bread everyone loved. These desserts fed families without stress, without complicated steps, and without anyone leaving the table unsatisfied. Which of these 30 desserts will you bake this week? Drop the number in the comments and tell us which one your mom or grandma made. Share this with someone who needs easy dessert ideas.